Hey coaches, welcome to Championship Culture. It's we've been away for a while, but I got a fantastic guest tonight. Tyler Lloyd is the head football coach at Ogden High School in Iowa, and he's a 9-year head coach, but first at Ogden, and he came in late and got him in the playoffs, and he's got a couple unique ideas on how to build culture. So I'm going to throw the questions out at you, Coach, and just let you talk and coach us up. But I really appreciate you being here. And just before we started recording, he started telling me the story. And I was like, dang, stop right there and start over because it's a really interesting story. So just go into kind of introduce how this year and I'll go ahead and give the first question is, can you give a 1-minute elevator introduction of yourself? But you don't have to keep it to a minute. The way you started when we were talking before is perfect. So go ahead, Coach.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Yeah, so that elevator introduction, for me, I'm Tyler Lloyd. I've lived in Iowa my entire life. Graduated from Shelton High School and went and played ball at Morningside University in Sioux City. That was a great opportunity for me. I was shaped by the coaches that I had. My high school head coach, Matt Mainring, had such a profound impact on my life. My dad took off when I was 11 years old, and I have not seen him since. I was in contact with him a little bit in my early 20s, but other than that, nope, not around. And so, like anybody in this profession, you have those young men that you can impact, and Matt Mainring really did a great job of that with me. And I was very blessed. We played football at a high level, played for a state championship in high school, and I guess that's probably where I caught the bug a little bit. I had no idea what road we were even going down. I had no idea that this was a career path for me. I was just having fun playing football with my buddies, and it turned into a career, turned into a college career, and then obviously it's turned into a coaching career. And the coaching side of it is different. There's no doubt about that. But it really has been a wonderful opportunity for me. I'd be in trouble if I didn't mention my wife, Maggie, who is the at-risk coordinator at Ogden High School too. So I teach high school PE, do the strength and conditioning, the stereotype, right? But that was not my background. I actually was I was a middle school social studies teacher for 7 years and felt like I paid my dues there, and then found this path to doing something that I could do during the day and still impact and work with kids. And then, help myself out on the football side as well. And then with my wife being the at-risk coordinator, let's be honest, fellas, we don't coach a bunch of angels sometimes. And so we really do play an intricate role where we're at. And she just does a phenomenal job of helping me reach some kids that I can't reach, and really getting them in a place where they can excel academically. And it's really been something that we've been excited about. And yeah, like you mentioned, I actually went back to Sheldon and was the head coach there for 8 years. And my life should have been like a storybook, right? Coach leaves, or player leaves, comes back, becomes the head coach, and it should all just write out the way it should go. And that just didn't happen. And I found myself in April looking for a different opportunity, and ended up here in Ogden, which is 3 hours away. And in Iowa, it's kind of who you know sometimes. We're a rural area, and you tend to hang out with family and those kinds of things. We have no connections to Ogden, Iowa. Zero. None. Not in the building, not in the community. And so for us, this was a big leap of faith, but we felt like we were really being nudged. And to say that this has exceeded our expectations would be an understatement. It's been really good for our kids as well. There's just some different dynamics in education right now that you have to deal with. And this was a good opportunity for us. So yeah, we made that leap. And like you mentioned, got here July 31, started camp July 31, and rolled into the season. And I think what you learn from an experience like that is what travels and what you can take with you. And I think as coaches, we all know we don't have all the right answers. And if somebody did, we'd pay them lots of money so that we could all have the right answers. And these are just some things, as I share tonight, some trials and tribulations that I've been through. Like I said, I thought I was in my forever place, and that just didn't happen. And I also think coaches have a shelf life, and sometimes you got to know when it's time to recharge a little bit. And for me, this has been a resurgence, and has been something that we're really excited about. And it's just crazy to look back. I mean, we're sitting here, December 13, and to think that, man, I've only been here like 5 months. And so there's still a lot of work left to be done here, and we're really excited to get going on that. So there's your longer than a minute elevator introduction, but I think that gives you a sense of, where I'm at and how I ended up here.
I love it. I very got some very similar backgrounds with you. Uh, what size school is Ogden? How many kids?
Yeah, so we are considered a 1A school in the state of Iowa. So that gives us about 215 kids, grades 9 through 12. Now, the state of Iowa has shifted. And so we use a free and reduced lunch multiplier or reduction for schools. So my previous spot at Sheldon, that didn't have an impact on us, but it had an impact on the private schools around us because the private school has no free and reduced lunch. So those schools all got bumped up into the class that I was in at Sheldon. And that made some things very, very difficult because Sheldon's dealing with a 40% Hispanic population and then a 50% free and reduced lunch for my son, who was in the middle school last year and is a 7th grader this year. So when we moved to Ogden, smaller school, Sheldon's about 375, so Ogden's at 215, and then Ogden's free and reduced lunch rate's about 23%. So you're cutting that in half. And so then that just changes some of those dynamics. So for Ogden got bumped a class, went from class A to 1A in 11-man football. So that also created some barriers with that move in there as well. But like I said, we've kind of taken that in stride, and there are some things you can build off there, but there were a lot of things I learned in my previous position with some of those obstacles as well.
Probably could do a clinic on just coaching in a small school. We're right under, or we're right at 500. We're one of the smaller schools in the state, and you're dealing with half that. So I'd like to pick your brain on just getting kids out of the hallway and building a roster.
Well, my son always jokes he wants to be a head football coach someday, which is great, right? That's the thing that we always want to plant that seed. And so I give him all the jobs that they don't tell you about when you take a small school job. So he mows the practice field. He's out there. We're pumping up the balls. We're doing all those kinds of things. We filled in holes on the game field before. I mean, it has been, but he loves it, and it's an opportunity. You do things with your dad, right? And I'm not the hands-on guy. I'm not the motorhead. I'm not the construction guy. I can break anything. Trust me, I can break anything. But when it comes to repairing, that's not me. So football and athletics, those are the things that my oldest son and my younger son's getting there now, that they've gravitated to. So that's been a lot of fun. But no, you wear a lot of hats you wouldn't even expect.
I'm with you on the I can break it, I can't fix it. And I had two daughters, and we had them around the program as much as possible. Just I wanted them to be around it. There's something special about football and the commitment and the toughness, and I wanted my girls to see it. So question number two is give us your definition of culture.
Yeah, I think being in education and then in coaching, I think culture is a really big buzzword, right? And what's weird about culture is everybody's looking for it, and then some people aren't quite sure if they have it or not. I mean, you could talk to some coach who has gone on huge winning streaks and stuff, and they'll talk about the things that they do daily, but then they're still always looking to kind of master their craft, right? It's almost like a never-ending thing. So, for me personally, as I kind of looked at defining it, as I knew we were going to be meeting tonight, I look at what's going on when you're not there. Do the kids have you gotten the kids to love the sport where they're still going to show up and do those things? Have you instilled in them those values that are going to stay with them when they're out of your program? And then, you look long term down there too. Are they going to call you in 10 years? Are they going to shoot you a random text and just say, "Hey coach, something funny happened today, reminded me of this time at practice"? I think that's your culture. And we live in a society of instant gratification. That's not news to anybody. And it's getting, you look at technology and how rapid everything changes. And it's getting to the point now where things are changing daily. And even in coaching, things are changing all the time. That play the other night from Travis Kelce to Kadarius Toney that got called back, how many playbooks are going to have that in next fall at the high school level? Everybody's going to try that play. So it's just constantly changing. But the things that don't change, and coaches know this, it's the relationship piece. And I think if you build your culture on that, that is where you're going to have the most impact. And we all want to win. But winning is a byproduct of a lot of different things. You're going to have luck that's in there sometimes. You're going to have, a good draw. I'm not going to lie. My district at Sheldon, there's 5 teams ranked in the top 10 in that district this season. I mean, from the outside looking in on that, it was like, all right, that was a pretty good move. Maybe that was okay. But you look at those things and you just try to understand where can you have the greatest impact, and it's on these kids' lives. So I think culturally they got to see you in that light. So you talked about having your daughters around the program. My sons are around the program. They ride the bus with us, and those are probably the most fun times for me coaching, because my players act different. They talk different when my kids are around. Now, that's not always the best way I'd like them to be talking, but it's better than most high school kids. And but they're talking, hunting and fishing. Again, that's not me, but my boys love that stuff, and my players love that stuff. And you hear them telling stories on the bus about all these fish they caught, and half of those stories aren't true, but they're sharing those things and doing those things, and it's a really unique thing. It's a really unique perspective. So I think culturally, you want to have that open dialogue. You want players to be comfortable with that. And, like I said, going to the weddings, that is like the most rewarding thing for me. Now, I don't need a bunch of wedding invites. I like my summers, to myself. But, when you go there, my gosh, it's like you end up at a table, you got, 7, 8 different, former players around there, and they're making fun of you about something you said that you can't even recall. And so I'm getting old enough now where I'm getting to the point where, yeah, those really fill your cup, because there's a lot of things in coaching that can empty the cup. Those are the things that fill it. So when you're building your culture, you want to make sure you have those things.
It's funny. I talk about the weddings, that's you made an impact when you get invited back to a wedding. All right. So here's the big question. This is the money, the big drum roll. What are the 3 best things you do to build culture in your program?
Yeah. So you talked about small schools, and I've had experience at both of them. Sheldon, my first season there in 2015, we had 35 kids on our roster. And I was that guy, first year head coach. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to draw this line in the sand. You're going to go to the weight room. And if you don't, you're not going to be on the team, all the stuff. You've heard it. We've all heard it. And then we went 0-9 and scored 7 touchdowns. And that's a long season. Now, I wouldn't recommend that as a way of life, but I think as a first year coach, that's the way it should be. You should go 0-9, and you should learn through that grind a little bit. And, when I looked at that off season and what we needed to do to get better, yes, there were some things schematically, there were some X's and O's that could have been fixed. There were fundamentals and skills and all those kinds of things, but I needed players. How do you practice with 35 kids, and how do you develop talent for the future with only 35 kids on your roster? So we went recruiting, and we recruited our hallways. And there's a lot of different things that you can do to recruit your hallways. I am at a huge advantage. Like I said, I teach. So I'm in the hallways. I'm in the building every day. I've taken the admin classes. I don't want to do that. And everybody says, well, why don't you want to be an administrator? I said, because I didn't get into education to work with adults. I got into education to work with kids. If you start working with adults, zebras don't change stripes. Like it's hard to get adults on board with things. Kids, man, they'll change their perception on things within about 30 seconds if you want them to, and they're willing to try things. So that's always been kind of fun. And then, so we look at that cultural piece. Now, I also talked about my wife. Now, my wife's only been in the building with me now for 3 years. So 2 years at Sheldon and 1 year here, but that's a huge asset for me. We are a package deal. And then iron sharpens iron. So she gives me some of those soft edges that I need with kids sometimes. And then, like I said, I can get her to reach kids that I can't. So it's a team effort there. And then the other thing we did was we looked at the program and we said, okay, if you don't win, because everybody wants to win. If you don't win, what are things that our players can leave our program with that we can say, this was successful? If you go 0-9 again, what are some things that your players can leave with? So one of the first things that we started was our junior senior retreat. And this was not this, again, coaches steal from coaches, right? So we had gotten this from a program that was up by us. Coach had presented at a clinic, said he took all the team on a junior senior retreat. Well, we were on a budget, so we could only take our juniors and seniors. And we have a lake in our area with some cabins, and we rented a few cabins, and we went out there and we brought our juniors and our seniors from this 0-9 team, and we invited their parents out for for a Thursday night meal. They came out, they fed us. We did these kinds of things, some team building things there. We swam in the lake. We chased a few geese. We weren't supposed to do that, but we chased a few geese. We played some ghost in the graveyard. We did very little football stuff. And I remember sitting there thinking, all right, we're not doing any football. Now, young coach, 0-9 season, you get a little antsy about that, but it's like, all right, 2 days with very, very minimal football. And you reflect on that, right? And we started off that season playing a team that was garnering rankings in the top 10. We were on a 14-game losing streak at that time. So they had lost 5 the previous year under my predecessor, who was my hero, Matt Mandering, and then 9 losses under myself. And then we're playing this perennial top 10 team, and we beat them. And I'm not saying it's the retreat, but we had so many more kids on our team that year. I think our roster numbers were up to like 48 that season. And by doing that, you just see kids in a different light. One of the funniest memories of that thing was the first night there, the kids go in the cabins. They got control of their air conditioning. High school kids, they run hot, right? They turn the air conditioning in their cabin down as low as it would go, 56 degrees. Now, that's not my cabin. That's the one these kids were staying in. I put the juniors in one, the seniors in the other. And I went in there that next morning for wake-up call. And I get to the back bedroom, and there's a kid there, and he's got all these shirts around him. And I'm like, buddy, what are you doing? Why are you wrapped in shirts? Well, I didn't bring a blanket. I didn't bring a pillow. I'm like, are you kidding me? I had extras in my truck. Like, why did you just say something to me? He laid there and shivered all night. And his buddies gave him their extra clothes so that he could wrap up there in those shirts. And that's how he said he barely slept. He slept good the second night because he had a blanket and pillow. But that was just one of those things. We had they had a 9 square in the air thing, and the coaches were playing the kids in that. I still have videos of that on my phone, and I'll pull those up sometimes, just them talking smack to each other, and playing that thing and just rounds with that. So that was something we thought that's important. So that junior senior retreat has been a staple of the program. Now, I couldn't do it at Ogden, showing up July 31, but that is something that's on our radar for next year. And I've kind of morphed it a little bit. We started going to college campuses because it was cheaper. The cafeteria could feed us, and that was always somewhat cost effective, and it was buffet style. Because you're talking about kids, you got to feed them. That first year I brought peanut butter and jelly. Yeah, that was not popular. Okay. These kids were complaining that they were starving on this retreat. Coach is trying to starve us before camp. So, we beefed that up a lot. And I actually got to the point, I was getting so good on this junior senior retreat. I brought out food about every 3 hours. Just, it could be anything, granola bars, Pop-Tarts. We get things donated by the Booster Club. We ate buffet style wherever we went so that they could eat as much as because they can eat. And I got to the point where they just, no, coach, like no more. No, like I can't eat anymore. And that's when you're doing a pretty good job there. So we beefed that up. The other reason we started going to college campuses is because with our high Hispanic population and a lot of our kids being low socioeconomic, they don't visit college campuses. They don't even know what that looks like. And if you call a college coach in your area and you tell them you're going to bring about 25 kids on their campus, they will give you the grand tour because it's summer. It's right before they're ready to roll. They've got new coaches on campus that got to practice doing their campus tours anyway, and it's free recruiting for them. I'm bringing the players right to you. And the head coaches have been really gracious to us wherever we've gone, give us access to the field, facilities, those tours, the rah-rah speeches and those kinds of things. Then they don't have to listen to me all the time, because I don't have all the answers. And like I said, I know I can't reach every kid, but it's a lot of fun. And you get there and you just see kids in a different light. And you got these guys going around practicing the recruiting like, oh yeah, hey, we're sponsored by Nike. So when you guys get here, you get all this stuff in this locker, and and you got some kids that, that's not reality for them, but they're looking at it like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Wow. And you don't know, maybe that seed doesn't grow there, but it's planted. And maybe that player goes and he's got kids someday and hey, you're talented in this. And if you do a good job with this, they'll give you free Nike stuff. You have no idea. And so that expanded it. And then we always tried to go to a place that had water park. So you go swimming, you do those kinds of things. I had assistant coach one time, jump off the high dive, landed on his face. He belly flopped it. He stood up on the top and he, got them all cheering for him. And he jumped off and landed on his face in the water and gave himself a black eye. That's a story right there. That's a memory. You can go 0-9 and the kids are still going to laugh at that and think that was the most funny thing. I had some players standing by one of the slides, watching them come down, just dying laughing. And I'm like, what are you guys laughing about? And they looked at me and they said, Coach, Pedro can't swim. And I'm like, oh my gosh, why do we have Pedro on the slide? Oh, we tricked him. So they had one of the players, they went down on a buddy tube and they went down and he came out of that slide and his eyes were huge, bugging out. And my eyes, I'm sure my eyes matched his. And oh my gosh, they thought that was the funniest thing ever, getting this kid out there, couldn't swim, and they had him on there. And he was fine. We were safe. We had lifeguards. We had kids who were certified lifeguards standing there. They thought that was the funniest thing that they could ever come up with. So just those things, that retreat, the last one I went on, I remember we were sitting there watching Jimmy Fallon. I don't know why. That's just what we ended up doing. We were eating Oreos and watching Jimmy Fallon. And I'll always remember that one because I didn't know it at the time, but that was my last one with my Sheldon kids. That was it. And I still have really close relationships with those guys. I get to drive 3 hours next week to watch one of them sign at the University of Northern Iowa, which is really exciting. That doesn't happen in Sheldon very often. So that in itself was a way to get our hallways. That was one thing that we did.
So just give me a few. I'm fascinated by this idea. Give me a few.
Yeah.
Is it 2 days, one night? Is that basically what you're doing?
Yeah. So we do. Yeah. So we've done the night after camp gets over, we'll leave. So then you get one kind of first overnight, a full day Thursday for us is when we're there. And then that's when you do you see the coaches. We call it prac. We go out on their field. I just think that's cool. We didn't have field turf, so that was cool. And then you go there on that Thursday and you do that all day. You go to the water park, you eat your meal. There were years where we did some of those meetings, but then there were years like I had a group of kids that they couldn't handle meetings. So what I kind of did with that was, because you want the team building aspect to take place too, right? We're coaches. That's what we want. So we sit down with the seniors. Hey, what are your expectations? Some years that meeting's 10 minutes. Some years that meeting's 2 hours, but it's on the kids. And if you're going to build culture, you've got to delegate some of that power to the kids. They have to feel like they're empowered with what you're doing. So that's what they would do on that Thursday night meeting. And then we always tried to have lights out by 11. Now, let's be honest, that don't happen. Okay. We also took their cell phones away, which, let's be honest, that didn't happen for everybody. Although we were pretty good about it. My players will probably say otherwise, but there was one night they were hungry and they ordered a pizza and they walked to the local gas station to go get pizza. Now, I could have gotten pissed because they shouldn't have left, right? But I also knew they went to go get this pizza. So I just followed them from a distance. I stayed at like a block away. They had no idea I was even following them. And it was really funny because the kids are like, you didn't go that. And I said, yeah. I said, Jeremy, you dropped your cell phone. And they just look at each other. Oh my gosh, coach followed us all the way. It was, it's 3-block walk or 4-block walk. Coach followed us all the way to Casey's and followed us back. So it's just, they're funny little stories. And then Friday morning, we wake them up bright and early, 6 a.m. And then we use our mascot name. So at Sheldon, now Sheldon is the home of the Orubs. You'll never hear of anything like that again. Okay, so Orubs, the Fighting Orange and Blacks. It's a combination of the school colors. It's a made-up thing. It was voted ESPN's worst mascot. I loved it. I loved being an Orub. I mean, I was an Orub and I got to coach the Orubs and do all that stuff. But so it was the Orub Olympics. And this year we had the Bulldog Olympics, even though we didn't go on the retreat. And you just come up with a bunch of goofy games. You put point values on them. You have them compete with each other. And it's kind of like, whose line is it anyway? The points don't matter and the rules are made up. That's just kind of how it goes. So we get them doing charades and, that'll unlock their next level and they can go do this. They'll play punt football. We get some running in there. It's conditioning. I told them one year we were going to run around a lake. The lake was 13 miles long. So they were all afraid that was true and that was reality. But again, those are memories. Those are things that they have with them. So that's our junior senior retreat kind of in a nutshell there.
All right. A few more details. You
Yep.
call the football coach
Yep.
of the college that you want to go visit. All right. So
Yep.
they're going to set up the tour of the facilities and all that. All right. Were you staying in their dorms?
Yes.
All right.
No
And
pool.
how would you set that up? Who do you talk to on that deal?
So most schools will have an event coordinator. Because most colleges are renting out their facilities for use by other entities. So sometimes I actually had better luck getting a hold of the event coordinator than I did the football coach. And then they would work together, and then I would get in contact with everybody that I needed to. But yeah, they'd reach out to the kitchen staff for you. They get your lodging figured out, and it's cheaper than camp. Like that was a big selling point um for my administration at that time, was this is cheaper than going to team camp. I think I could get a kid through there. I think it was $38 one year that we spent. Now, prices of everything have gone up, and we added more food in there. But I'm telling you guys, you can get it done for under $100 easy. And your booster club's going to be all over it. You're going to have donors in the community that are going to support it. You're going to have parents that are well off that are going to support it. So for us, our kids didn't pay a dime. The junior senior retreat was 100% free. Water park, food, all of it. Everything was free for them.
Okay. Well, you about 100 ahead you could count on
That's easy. Yeah.
between food, dorm, and water park.
Yep.
All right. I love it, man. I'm all about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I missed it this year. That was one thing that was really kind of a bummer, but it's something that our kids are looking forward to next year. And what am I using it as? It's a recruiting tool. I'm
So
using it.
so you're using that as a recruiting tool. Have you picked your college yet, or do you set that up well in advance?
Um, I have, but when you take only your juniors and seniors, you only needed 2 destinations. And when I was at Sheldon, we were a little more landlocked than we are here at Ogden. Ogden, I'm pretty close to the Des Moines area, so that opens up some different pathways for us. But at Sheldon, yeah, I had 2 landing spots that we would go. But Buena Vista University, I guess I should give them a shout out. And Storm Lake has always been really accommodating to us. But any program that I've reached out to is like, absolutely, like whatever it takes. COVID, there was one year, a lot of restrictions with that. And we were able to get into Dordt University in Sioux Center, Iowa, which was only 20 minutes away. And that was tough for our kids to kind of wrap their minds around because it was pretty close. But the thing was, like, guys, you want to go on the retreat or not? And we had a lot of great memories there, and we were only 20 minutes away. And they did a great job of hosting us too. The colleges love it. The events coordinators love it. Your administration's going to love it. And most importantly, the kids are going to love it.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. So did you have another one that you want to talk about?
Yeah. So a second one, and this one's a little more recent for us, is we have an adopt a player program. So again, we use our mascot for that. So here we're the Bulldogs. So I actually have a mascot. So it's an adopt a bulldog. And what I do is I send out a letter to the community. I use social media, Facebook posts and community sharing posts and all that kind of stuff. And looking for members of the community and alumni that want to sponsor a player during the season. And the only thing I ask for them is to just send cards of well wishes and correspondence with the player once a month. That's all they need to do. So if you take August, September, October, 3 times is all they need to do. That's all I'm asking for. And you'll have, church clubs and men's groups and all those kinds of things jump on board. And when I first introduced it in Sheldon, I was only looking for men because I shared my story about my father, not being involved and doing those kinds of things. And then I had some women in the community reach out and say, I can do better at this than any man could. My husband can't remember any. And so then we expanded it. And, my mom is single parent too, and can hold herself up. She's tough old bird. And, she was like, I can do this really well too. And so we opened it up and it was just phenomenal. I mean, some of the stories you hear, they'd go out to eat with their adopt a player. They'd send them care packages, almost like your secret cheerleaders in the school, which I know is popular in some places. And that idea that came from John Gordon. He spoke in Sheldon in the spring of 2021. There was still a lot of COVID restrictions, but Iowa didn't have them. So it was like the only spot John Gordon could speak. So I'm sure he probably walked in there and was like, oh man, there's like 200 people here and that's it. And yeah, but man, I got front row seat for that. Got to ask him questions and do those things. And when I left, he talked about his correspondence with Dabo. So then I started listening to that, and Dabo talked about how they recruit nationwide, right? And then they're trying to give them that connection to the Clemson community. Now they didn't use an adopt a program, but they were using the resources that they had nearby at Clemson to connect with these players. And I was like, that is all right. We need that. That's something we need. That's a next level thing. That's bigger than the retreat. That's longer. That's community involvement. That's something that we need to do. And so we rolled that thing out. And, you know, it also came from a place of a lot of pain for me. We had a community member with a player on the team and coaches, you know how it goes, disgruntled, upset, mad, to the point where my wife and my mother had to leave a game. And I couldn't get any administrative relief in that situation, even though I asked for it. I had to deal with it on my own, which I did. And I was very direct with it too. But the other thing I thought about was if we can create this buffer for these kids so that they're not surrounded by such negativity, because the negativity is the loudest. And this person was going to stand up and be loud at games and be vocal and be upset, even when the calls were right, even when they were right. You know, the toughest sell to that parent was, you do understand NFL analytics are not high school analytics. So yes, Joe Buck and Troy Aikman, they got it all down. You're right. But those analytics are different. And that was tough to get across there. But this creates a buffer for you and for your kids, most importantly. I can take all the grenades. I've shown that. But I've also got a headset on, so I can't hear everything. Kids aren't wearing a headset. So if you got fans up there out of control, they hear everything. And so this was something that put more fans in our stands. They showed up to our freshman games. They showed up to our JV games. And how do I know that? Well, because I knew everybody at Sheldon, and I could look up there and I'd be like, you know what? She doesn't have a kid this. Oh yeah, that's right. She's on the Adopt an Orb program. That's her. And then they're out there after the game, taking pictures next to the fence, you know, doing those kinds of things, introducing themselves. And you're like, whoa, holy smokes, this is really blossomed. And something that was, so you take those things, right? Those trials, those travesties in coaching, and you see something like that, and you're like, okay, I understand why that happened. And now look at how many lives have been improved as a result of that. Look at how much more fun coaching is for everybody, myself included, because of that. And getting to Ogden, that was one of the first things I got to roll out here. And this community took it to a whole nother level. I have teachers, staff members that just have jumped on board with this and have taken it. And it's not, you're not landlocked here. So that letter, I have them send it to the school because I can't give out the kids' personal information. So it's protected that way, just like sending any other mail to the school. It gets checked that way. And then these kids are getting extra notes. They're getting extra newspaper clippings. That's probably my favorite, is when they send them their newspaper clippings like, hey, I saw you in the paper. Here's your picture. Like, here's a copy. And you've got people that haven't been to a game in probably 20, 25 years. And now they have a connection to what's going on there. So again, that one was not a recruiting tool like the junior senior retreat, but it's become this thing that has become a part of our program. And I would hope that, you know, should I not make it, you know, God, you know, should I not make it to tomorrow, I hope that's something that continues to go on, because it has such a level of impact. My favorite is the players won't talk about it. They don't really say anything about it. You'll hear them in stretching and they'll be like, hey, at Sheldon, it was my Orab mom and my Orab dad. Here it's my Bulldog family. You know, they talk about them in that light, like, hey, they got me these Swedish fish, and now I get to eat all this candy before the game. Coach is going to be he tells us not to eat candy before game, you know, just that stuff. And you look at those things and you're like, wow. And again, you want to fill your cup as a coach, because everybody's going to do everything they can to empty it. And that is something that has been extremely impactful, and it's really easy to implement.
I love it. I love it, man. So next question is, what do you know now that you wish you knew when you first got started?
Yeah, that's a deep question. You know, I told my wife that I had that one on there too, and she even sat back and went, oh, you know, I think
$1 million question.
yeah, and it is $1 million question. You know, when I first took a coaching job, I really thought it was going to be making really sweet play calls on 4th and 1. You know, that's, and it's like, man, and they're going to all go really well too. Even if they're punt, like, it's going to be, they're going to be phenomenal. Mm. And it is not. I think the thing that I wish I would have known was that you're the first line of defense for these kids. And, you know, whatever it is. And so when they've got stuff going on at home that's outside of their control, if you are a pillar in their life, they're going to come talk to you about it, and you're probably going to be the first one to know about it. And you're going to have to try to, navigate through that. Whether it's a marital issue at home, something with a sibling. It could be, finances. Like, let's be honest, finances in America, it's kind of a broken thing. And there are some situations where kids just are left without. And so that, I would say, that one is for sure. You're that first line of defense. You're the first line of defense socially. When their buddies are mad at them, well, why? And trying to figure that out. Or what if their hobbies and interests don't match the team? So when you cast a wide net, and I'm guilty of this, when you cast a wide net to get as many players as you can. I mean, I've had player numbers up to 70, 75 at these tiny little schools. And I'm not bragging, we're going to be over 50 next year. That's our goal. Like, we, as coaches, we set those goals. That goal means more to me than the win-loss record, because the win-loss is, so you got to avoid injury. You got to have execution. You got to have, you got to catch some breaks. You do. Now we're going to playoffs. That's on there. Don't get me wrong, but we're going to have over 50 kids on our roster because that's how you practice. That's how you have the biggest impact. I'm guilty of casting a wide net and having some kids that maybe shouldn't, maybe aren't putting all their, sweat in the bucket. They probably aren't. They need football more than football needs them. And I think as a coach, then you got to understand your surroundings a little bit too. And if people can handle that or not. And then when you've got those kids, you want to dedicate time to your preparation and those kinds of things too. But then you'll have kids go, I had 2 players get in trouble with law enforcement. Again, first line of defense. They got in trouble with law enforcement, like within a week of each other. And you have to deal with that stuff. And, I didn't anticipate that, it was that 4th down call. Like, where's my 4th down call right now? Not this call at, 7:30 in the morning in July telling me that my kids had jumped over the fence at the pool and jumped in the pool. Well, everybody wants you as the coach to like be the bad guy. I don't want to be the bad guy. I want them running to football. There are so many things that keep them away from football. I want them in my program. I don't want to be the bad guy. Now I can. Same thing with the classroom stuff, teacher comes down and thinks you can just solve their problems for why they're not motivated in class. And I'm not discrediting, if I have a relationship with the kid, I can probably, get them to behave well. But at the same time, I don't want to be harping on them on their grades all the time, because if it's not a priority to them, it's not a priority to them. And they're not going to get straight A's because nobody's perfect. Like, that's just reality of it. So, I think that part of it, I just didn't anticipate. And I think a second thing, what I wish I would have known, and I've referenced this a little bit, adults ruin it. They really do. And I wish we could remove adults from all parts of the sport, because it changes the dynamics. Think about it. If kids would just go out and play, they would just play. They would just have fun. Like, nobody'd be keeping score. Well, they'd keep score, but they'd play until it was pitch black out, until they were tired from exhaustion, just fall over. They would just, naturally do that stuff. They'd run their own plays and then they wouldn't complain about yours. It's a unique thing in that regard, that adults, because we just assume, especially in education, we just assume that adults are there to help kids. And that's not totally the case. I think there's 2 kinds of teachers, and maybe this is true of coaches too, but there's those that were inspired by somebody, so they want to go make the change. And then there's those that are compensating for something that happened, and they're spending their professional lives trying to compensate for something that happened and some shortcoming somewhere. And it really, the more I sit here and watch it, it's frustrating. So you want to keep that focus on the kids as best you can and getting them the things that they need. And I'll give you examples. I had players who couldn't afford tuxedos for prom, and I knew it was a problem. And I knew the tux rental was a huge burden. And I went and I knew our football account was solvent, because I'm a good salesman. That's how I got on here, Joe, right? Just selling. No, I didn't sell anything to you, but you got to self-promote, right? And so our account was full, and I asked admin, can we get some tuxedo vouchers for kids? Well, which kids? No, not which kids. That's not what I said. I said, can I just get, set aside some vouchers, and if a kid, we'll just say they're available, and if a kid needs it, they can come up and get it. No, we can't do that. I left that room and I just thought, what in the world are we doing? The dollars and cents are there. What are we doing? And you just sit there and you're like, that's a good thing to do. I paid for tuxes every year for the last 5 years. I gave a kid a pair of my own pants. He still got them too. But I gave him a pair of my pants so that he could go to prom, because he wasn't going to go. And he stood up his date, and she's mad at him. And he comes up to me and he goes, is that bad to stand up your date? I'm like, it's a week of prom. Yes, that's horrible. Like, her mom's probably more upset than she is. Oh, that's bad. Yeah, that's bad. They don't know. So you're trying to educate them through those things, and it just, you've got to be that frontline defender. And then you want to put yourself in a position where you can be successful. So, as you look at those things, if you're banging your head against the wall, don't wonder why it hurts. Like, sometimes you got to find light at the end of the tunnel. Like, that's your responsibility. One of the things I promised my wife, I was so absorbed in what I was doing at Sheldon. It's because that's where I was from. I had such a love affair with that community, where coming in here, I can look from, a 3,000-foot view and look at things a little different. But I have assistant coaches who are from Ogden. I got one with a bulldog tattoo on his leg. You cannot be any more committed than that.
They're all in when you get the tattoo, buddy.
They are all in. And that's phenomenal, because they can have that attachment. And I can kind of, back off a little bit and look at it from a standpoint of what can we do to get better? And so you want to surround yourself with the right people in that regard. And so you learn those things, and they're trials, they're tribulations, they're tough. There are a lot of sleepless nights. My wife and I, we are a solid team, but to say that we don't shake the trees once in a while and have our differences, no, this career can do that to you as well. But I think because we look at it from a standpoint of who we're impacting, and at the end of the day, keeping the kids in the forefront of our minds, then I think we can take that and say, hey, we can handle this. We can do whatever. We can go wherever, we can handle whatever. And it's pretty empowering to be able to do that together. And, I knew that at the beginning, though. There's your $1 million answer to your $1 million question. If you've got the best sidekick in the world, then you've got nothing to worry about, because they're willing to go to the ends of the earth, with you. And that's the type of love and commitment that you want for anything. And we're very committed to what we're doing here. I think the players that I've had would say that. I'll go anywhere. I'll do anything. I'll pick you up when your truck's broke down. I'll buy you a meal. I'll sit down. And I just went home over Thanksgiving break and sat down with a couple of my former players for lunch, and they texted me, and just carving out that time, and I'll do those things until I can't do it anymore, because that's what the profession's about, and that's why we should be there.
Agreed, man. I love everything you said, and it really is that the kids are easy. It's adults that are difficult sometimes, and that's just part of the game too. You
Absolutely.
did fantastic, man.
Thank you.
Your Twitter, so guys can contact you.
Yeah, so it's at TM Lloyd, LLOYD.
All right.
67.
Say again.
67 at the end of that.
67.
Yep.
TM Lloyd 67.
Yep.
All right. And I'll put that on the show notes so guys can contact you. And you got the last word. Anything you want to promote, or any last word, anything you want to talk about?
Yeah, the last thing I have, and I just always said, if I had an opportunity at, clinics or online or anything to do this, my middle son, Parker, who's 11 now, was diagnosed with cancer when he was 2. And so he had a bone marrow transplant. We caught it very early at the University of Minnesota Children's Hospital. And, obviously he's doing really well. We just celebrated 9 years cancer-free, and again, those trials and tribulations, those things that empty and fill your cup. He fills my cup every day. Sometimes it's with anger, but he fills my cup. He's a fiery little kid, and he has his own interests. But I just always wanted to make sure that, as coaches, we're connected all over. And, if you have anybody in your community that's going through anything like that, networking questions and those kinds of things, sometimes it's it's just important to know that there's somebody out there who can relate. I don't have all the answers, and my memory of that is fading as we get farther and farther away from that. But it just had a huge, profound impact on my wife and I. It happened right before I became a head football coach, which actually gave me reservations about taking the first job, and actually was asked of me in my interview, which was very an uncomfortable thing. But it was asked about my son's health, which was frustrating. But it is one of those realities. And so, if guys ever come across this thing and they have that going on, whether it's in their personal life or if it's somewhere in their community, they're just looking for somebody to network. My son had a bone marrow transplant at the age of 2. He had a cord blood transplant, and he is 100% donor cells. He's considered cured. I mean, obviously, you have all the stuff down the road, but we all have those same things. I eat too much, so I mean those things happen, and can wear on you over time. But I always said if there was anything that gave me a platform to speak out about that, I just wanted people to know that I'm here to reach out and to try to be a positive voice in that regard if needed.
Well, number one, praise God. Number two, it's awesome that you're, putting it out there because I'm sure that kind of news just knocks you flat on your back, and it's probably gonna, whoever sees this who needs to reach out, they're probably gonna be looking for someone to reach out to that's been through it and can guide the way, lead the way, and give support. So I appreciate you doing that. And man, you did fantastic.
Thanks.
I know you guys made the playoffs the first year, and it sounds like you're getting your numbers up, and you haven't even had your junior senior retreat yet, so that you're gonna blast off like a rocket after this. But man, I appreciate you doing it, and you did fantastic. This will be up within the next week or so. So
Absolutely.
I'll shoot you. I'll DM you when it gets put up. And but I appreciate it, brother. You did great.
Yeah. Thanks. Appreciate it.